We'll get back to the music a little bit later on, but we bring in Douglas Mullenix, who is a Republican candidate for the 6th Congressional District seat here in the state of Wisconsin. I'm hoping I got your last name right, Douglas.
Yeah, perfect on the first try.
All right. So you are running as a Republican against the incumbent. What made you decide that you wanted to wade into politics?
Yeah, so I have a bit of an unusual story, but it's actually maybe the most Glenn Grothman story ever. So first and foremost, running basically when I got into this was focusing on a couple matters, tackling the mental health crisis in this country and then also expanding veterans benefits. So on that specifically, trying to pursue legislation that establishes mental health care as medically necessary the way physical health care is covered. And then on the veteran side, I don't know if you hear about a lot of the veteran suicide, but a lot of it comes from vets with PTSD not being able to sort through the red tape that they have to go through in order to get their disability. So just making it kind of more of a simple process that you're a vet, you have PTSD, go to the doctor of your choice, and we are going to take care of you. You fought for us, we'll fight for you. And, kind of getting back where I said the most typical Glenn Grothman story possible is go around, ask people, and maybe the most common response is, well, I wrote in Glenn, he didn't get back to me. And that is actually how I got into this race. I come from the private sector. I worked about 6 years in finance and then the last 4 in healthcare consulting and was, working along, going along, and COVID hit, and that shut down a lot of our businesses because they were deemed unessential, which I don't know how a back surgeon or a hip surgery or cataracts or anything like that is deemed unessential. But during that process was reading a lot about the mental health issues going on. And particularly amongst children, where in 2020 cases of bodily harm and depression were up about 800%. And so came up with the legislation pieces that I described to you just now, and actually wrote in and called into Grothman's office. I live in Menasha. He is my congressman, and was just continually ignored, and volunteered to offer to, work on these of kind of sitting around, not doing a whole lot for a little while. And after a while of just being ignored, you kind of get to the point where it's like, look, this stuff is important. If you're not willing to take this up, I will, and that means I'm going to run for your job.
Okay, you mentioned the veteran thing. You actually had a grandfather that served.
Yeah, so interesting story of how military service is part of the American story, American dream, and can really kind of provide for some family transition. So my grandfather, I actually have both grandfathers served in the military, both in Korea I and World War II. And my grandfather, Travis, he was actually a sharecropper in Texas, and at the age of 14 forged his birth certificate to go drive a tank in World War II. And so used that, he was a Marine, so continued in the Marines all the way through Korea, used the GI Bill to go to the University of Texas, and very smart man, ended up graduating summa cum laude and kind of went into the corporate world and really, kind of set himself up for a nice career after military service that kind of provided the foundation to, create my father and the rest of my family as it is, and has provided me with the opportunities to, live in safe neighborhoods and attend great schools. And really, this was kind of a frontal point when I was thinking about getting into the race, is even though I'm not a veteran, I owe everything I have to veteran service, and, really wanted to figure out how can we make sure that amidst the talk of taking care of everyone, how do we make sure they're the first people that we take care of?
Okay. You have a website, douglasmullenix.com. I'm not going to try and touch on everything on the website because it might take us half a day to do that. So,
yeah.
But I did want to ask you, where do you differ a little bit from your opponent in the GOP primary?
So I'll say this quickly. So first of all, for those listening, you can also go to douglas4wisconsin.com, since Mullenix is a little hard to spell.
Okay.
I've listed everything on my website, which I've quickly learned is not what people do in politics. So I don't know if that's a good or a bad. Hey, a couple quick things with Glenn. Number one is, okay, let me start this way. Glenn has never actually passed a law in 8 years in Congress. He's the only Wisconsin delegate to never do so. So all the complaints of, oh, no one will work with me, whatever, well, that's a little bit on you. And I think that comes with his kind of push to the far, far right. And although I am a true Republican, at the end of the day, I'm probably a little more on the moderate centrist side than he does, because I view as like, hey, you're going to have to work with the other person to get stuff done, whether it's mental health, veterans. These are bipartisan issues. Couple areas where I'll separate myself from Glenn is, let's talk about a bipartisan issue. There's something called the Pittman-Robertson Act, which the short version is through a surtax on ammunition and other firearm-related products, it actually provides all the funding for conservation in Wisconsin. And look it up. It's wildly supported by groups like Ducks Unlimited, and it provides a lot of conservation funding, which provides for hunting grounds and the like in Wisconsin, and it's been around since FDR. And Glenn Grothman has proposed repealing it in a bill that was introduced, I think, about a couple months ago now. Another area is, I know Glenn always goes around and talks about, hey, I defend the badge, I want to keep families safe, and the two of us are in complete agreement on that. I mean, crime is obviously something that needs to be tackled, and none of us would be safe without our firefighters and our police force. However, just recently in Congress, there was a bill called the Federal Firefighters Fairness Act, which basically, in short, provides for additional benefits to firefighters who were, injured in the job, whether breathing in carbon dioxide or other chemicals on the thing. And it was a bipartisan bill supported and passed by Congress, and Glenn voted against it. So I would love to know how he is going around parading, saying, I'm keeping you safe and I'm looking out for our first responders, and at the same time voting against him. So those are a couple areas, we differ on. I know, hey, getting into it, then there's going to be some social issues. I did not approve of his vote against gay marriage. I know that is not always the standard Republican Party position. I don't know if it's because I'm on the younger side. I'm 32, he's 67. But, there are some issues we differ on. But to me, it really comes down to, can you work with the other side and get things done, or do you follow the Grothman path of the only way I know how to legislate and govern is to blame the Democrats for everything? I'm not saying they aren't deserving of that blame, but at some point you have to work with them.
So are you one of the people that comes up with a solution or just kind of shouts at the rain?
No. I'm a policy guy. I'm a solutions guy. Look, I come from consulting, and the easiest way I can say this is whether it was on the healthcare side or a couple other projects we had that were more on growth equity side, a client brings you in, shows you a mess, and says, I need you to fix this. Now, if I walked into a client and said, well, here's the problem. Your finance person was not very smart. That created this horrific budget, and now you're, for clients like ours, it would be, you're about $500,000 in the hole, and really what you should do is fire the finance person. The client is going to look at us like, well, that's great, but I actually need to fix the problem. And that is how I made a living. You go in, you fix the problem. People have asked me, how do you fix the budget? I said, I can go through a budget like a sharp accountant. There's no one that can find junk and stuff better than I can. And that is where you need a solutions-based approach towards governance. This, the left gets in power and does what they want, and the right blames them, and then the right gets in power and, does what they want, and the left blames them. It gets you nowhere. And the American people know that. Most of us, would not identify with the farthest left and farthest right portions of the party. And most of us, if you ask, describe yourself, political party affiliation is not going to come up. They're Americans. And so they kind of view Congress as, hey, go get the job done. I really don't care who gets the credit. So I would say much more solution-focused, and that's why, like I said earlier, solution number one, go into the ACA. We're not going to get rid of it. It's here to stay. We had the chance to replace it. We did. Go into the ACA and make mental health deemed medically necessary under law. No more complaining about it. No more saying it's the Democrats or the Republicans' fault. Just fix the darn thing. On the veteran side, let them see the doctor of their choice. These people have had bullets flying at them. They work countless hours. They don't have weekends. They don't see their families at 6 months to a year at a time. And we're worried about whether a Democrat or a Republican gets credit for fixing a law. I mean, anyone who operates along that line should resign. And so that's where I kind of view it as, hey, we're not playing party politics anymore. We're coming in, we're fixing this. There is always going to be differences. Republicans and Democrats have two very different views of fiscal policy. On the Republican side, we tend to believe in kind of the Reaganomics, the supply side economics. On the Democrat side, you have Keynesian economics. And so we can have policy differences on that, what's the right tax code, et cetera. But on certain issues like taking care of first responders, veterans, mental health, it's bipartisan. It's not us versus them.
All right. We've got to wrap things up. You've got a lot, at least on the one website. I didn't know about the other one. So we'll drive people to that. Again, it's DouglasMullenix.com, and you said Douglas4Wisconsin.com.
Correct. If they go to the same place, it's just if you type in either, it'll take you to the same website. And you can read all about that. I'm very active on social media as well. Search for me on Facebook, or if you go to the website, it has the links to click through to that and kind of can read up on the other issues. Haven't had time to address today because, like I said, I think I did the non-political move and just people ask me a question, I tell them what they think. I didn't realize you're supposed to stick to like 2 talking points and never answer a third question, but I guess that's how we are.
All right, we got about a minute left. Why should people vote for you in the August 9th primary?
I would simply say, and we touched on this, is look at D.C., look at the partisan divide, look at the stalemate, the nothing that gets done, and ask yourself, do you enjoy that? If you enjoy that, then keep voting the same way, vote for Glenn Grothman. If you want to change the way things are done, bring more common sense, people willing to work with the other side, whether that's a Republican to a Democrat or Democrat to a Republican, then vote for me. I'm Douglas Mullenix. August 9th is the primary. You have a bunch of other important races to also vote in. But for your CD6 representative, that is what I would tell you.
And remember, you can only vote one party, so there you go.
Yes, only vote one party. It's tempting to vote all over, but you can't.
Douglas, thank you for joining us this morning. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Talk to you soon.
That is Douglas Mullenix, who is running as a Republican for the 6th Congressional District seat in the August 9th primary. We appreciate him joining us this morning.